Hello and welcome to Compounding Curiosity. I'm your host Kalani Scarrett, and this podcast is all about compounding your curiosity alongside my own through thoughtful interviews with interesting guests. For transcripts and detailed show notes, check out the links in the description. Hopefully you're as keen as me to learn something new, so let's get stuck in. Okay, my guest today is Robert Chelliah. Robert's story is honestly unreal, so strap yourself in. Born in Malaysia in 1939 in a rubber plantation town, Robert's father passed away when he was only 7, and when Robert was 16, he then left home and hitchhiked across Asia to Europe and then on to England. Robert later returned home, became a social worker in Singapore, and eventually made his way to Australia, where he became one of Australia's first migration agents in 1990. He built a successful business from scratch with offices in Perth, Singapore, KL, and India. And today, while still a registered migration agent, he's found a new passion in life. So Robert, at 83, is the founder and CEO of Lexmin, an organic health food farm in Cambodia. So in today's conversation, we cover his incredible story, some secrets to his success and his drive for life, and what it's like running an organic farm in Cambodia. So Robert's enthusiasm and positive attitude are infectious, and there's so much to take away from his story today. So I'm sure you'll enjoy my conversation with Robert Chelliah. So Robert, cheers for coming on, but in as much detail as you want to share and feel comfortable with, just tell me your story and who you are and where you've come from.
Thank you for this opportunity, Kalmani, because I think you're giving me an opportunity to be present in an international forum, and that I think has got a number of valuable lessons, experiences to other people, because when I look into my own background, the way it started my life from abject poverty, from a working class background, the way I had risen with my own self-effort, because there were no family members to help me, and the way I had reached to the height of what I think an average person should have reached. I'm very grateful to the many, many people who have helped me along the journey, and my own desire to change myself. So the fundamental drive was, as I said, I was born in a very working class background, and I had the option, either I got caught up in the same poverty, or I come out of that poverty and rise in life opportunity and life chances. So Norm would have told you I hitchhiked to England in 1957, 56 at the age of 16, from Malaysia right up to UK. And then I appeared on BBC on the 7:30 Frost program, and he asked me, because I had my photo in the Times, in the first page, and he asked me, what do I want to do when I reach London? I said, I want to study. So I did all these enormous offers, and I had the greatest opportunity to land up in a leading public school, Lancing College, and at Oxford University, which gave me the opportunity in my formative years to change my life value, opportunity, life chances. And I learned a lot because I was mingling with children from the upper crust, and the value that was learned in those educational situations was indeed valuable, mainly a sense of integrity, honesty, and transparency. These are the values that you acquire if you're in the right company. So that's my background. Now, I came back, and then I started work in Singapore as a probation officer. Then I was headhunted to become industrial relation officer, to smoothen the conflict between the Singapore government and the Malaysian government over the waterworks, mainly because cultural conflict. The Chinese engineers from Singapore, the Malay workers from Malaysia, there was a cultural disconnect. and so it became highly politicized. So I was selected by a high-powered committee to smoothen that conflict because I was a social worker trained in cross-cultural community development, and I went into the job, into a very highly stressful job where people like Lee Kuan Yew and so on were keeping a close eye because of the sensitive water situation. But I smoothened the conflict between the workers. And within 5 years, industrial relation came, everybody was happy, but I got bored. I don't like routine, boring job. So a friend of mine said, Robert, come to Australia and we need people like you. Now, that was in 75. In the early 70s, the white Australian policy was removed from the statute book. What happened is for decades, Australians were frightened of this yellow peril, the Japanese invasion, these colored people coming in, destroying your Anglo-Saxon life, all that sort of fear was embedded, entrenched into the population mind. Now, Gow Whitlam and people like Gow Whitlam and Al Grasby saw that was not to be. They have to change the social fabric, social values, the ethos, or the egalitarian ethos of the Australian society. So what they did, they decided to allow a number of select professionals from Asia, both black skin and yellow skin and brown skin, to come into Australia on a trial basis. And I was one of those pioneers. So I was sponsored actually by Archbishop Campbell and Bishop Challen in the Anglican Health and Welfare Services to do social work to the community. So I went there in 1975. I'm one of within 3 weeks my visa was approved. I had everything arranged. I didn't go through the normal pressure of a new migrant coming and looking for a job and so on. And I settled very smoothly into the job. But soon, the social work I found is quite different from what the situation called for. Traditional social workers are trained to keep the victims, accommodate the problem, to live with the problem. None of it requires an extraordinary, intuitive person to change the root cause of the problem. So the problem was not the victim, the problem was something else. So what I did when I was doing social work, in the poorer section of the general community, invariably I attracted Aborigines, I attracted a few migrants because of my ethnic background, my appearance, physical visibility and so on, and I had an extra work to work with them. The biggest problem was attitudinal racism. When in the 76, the boat people arrived, and that accentuated racism at its highest, and there were these organizations backed by that time Rhodesians, white South Africans, the Ku Klux Klan, the skinheads, they were all in Australia. And when they saw this changing of social values, they emerged, became more visible, and to the extent they became almost violent, threatening people's home. And I was the main target because the immigration department absorbed me into their post-arrival settlement program. Because I could speak multiple languages, I was trained as a community development worker, I knew cross-cultural counseling, so they absorbed me into the post-arrival settlement services. So the model we worked out, I shouldn't be a public servant, I should be framed within an NGO and supported by the Council of Churches, the trade union movement, the media. That's how Norm came in. and some benign community organizations. I collaged them to come and be involved in that controversial social change. And I became the target of these racist groups. But nonetheless, I formed the Perth Asian Community Centre and used that centre to bring about attitudinal change and a change in the mindset of entrenched bureaucracy. The Australian bureaucracy and service providers were not prepared for the sudden influx of Mekong Delta refugees and so on. They couldn't handle the language problem, the name, and so on. So every public department, they would send the worker to me. I was one social worker, and I would go into my office, social work, NGO office, and I'll find 30 people queuing up with all their problems, from health problem to this problem and that problem. Oh my God! And I tell you, I became the ear, the nose, the mouth of this enormous social disconnect to the public service. And out of sheer frustration, I became highly vocal, very critical of the system, being the inability to be sensitive. And I made some drastic recommendation publicly. And Norm was a senior reporter in the West, and he was very helpful. He was my agent influencer in the media. We worked in tandem, and the trade union council stood by me with any overt threat and so on. So with that, I became very bold, brave, and I would criticize the system so much so the senior public servants hated my guts. But change has to come. So eventually we labored, a group team, we brought about change. It was painful, stressful, but drastic change did come about. And people like Al Grasby supported me very, very well. And I rose up in the rank. So I was given the task of settling these cross-cultural boat people. And I was able to counsel them. And at the same time, pinpoint where the root problem was. And I told how the root problem has to change. Not the victims have to change. The root cause has to change. And it did change. I felt I'm being accepted. And when Brian Burke came into power, the Labour government, he straight away said, Robert, come into the Ministry of Community Services and help to develop policies and of access and equity to the minorities and the ethnic communities. And that's where I formulated policies. And I also given the task of settling Christmas Islanders from the Christmas Island. They became part of the mainland, I think in 78 or 79, and they were cocooned in an island with a different, they had no idea of the mainland. When they had to be resettled, I had to do the social resettlement planning. Things like how to dispose of rubbish, their rights, yes. I mean, they were living, they were recruited from different parts of Asia and in an island, in an Asian lifestyle. And if they had to come and live in the urban setting of mainland, they needed some basic social skills, in housing and application of housing, health, voting, their human rights, and so on. And this process of empowerment, I ran into problem with the union. The union saw me as a threat to their absolute hold on power. So there was a guy called Gordon Bennett. He was a good friend, but he also became very threatened by my independent empowerment process. So he banned me from the island. So Yes, I couldn't go in. But Keith Wilson, who was a minister of in charge of that service, is well known to me. I worked under Keith Wilson, Reverend Keith Wilson. He was before he became a minister in the state government. I was doing parish work in his. He told the Islanders Union, if you do not accept Robert Chelliah, we suspend the service to the island. So one whole year the service was suspended. But to this day, it earned me a good reputation among the islanders who are well settled in the mainland, because I stood up to their rights and so on, It was very, very traumatic, challenging a union, and I stood by my principle of social worth, and so on, and that won me the day, so without a problem. So that's my background in Australia. In 1990, I felt bored. Having set the program, the policies, everything, I get easily bored when the work becomes routine, when there's no challenge, So one day I came and told my wife I resigned from my job as a principal officer at Ethnic Affairs, which was giving me about $90,000 a year at that time. My wife nearly broke down and almost threw me out of the house. But nonetheless, I set up my agency, Australian Migration Agent, and in 1992, when the law was introduced to register migration agent, I was one of the first agents to register myself as an agent. And I became quite a prominent agent rapidly. And I had offices in South Africa, Middle East. I traveled all over the world, from Iceland to South Africa to China and so on. And I like traveling. So money was not important. So whatever money I earned, I experienced the world. Then in 1992, yes, I became a registered agent. And then I had a very successful career. I had 7 employees, 3 of them lawyers employed by my company. I went to India. This is an interesting episode. I had a contract from the West Australian government to start a TAFE college in India, in Chandigarh. And it's linked to Curtin University. And so I, as a migration agent, very successful in a town called Chandigarh. I started the agency, they prepared the school. The mafia was watching me in that city of Chandigarh. And when everything was coming to fruition, they came and approached me. They want to be participant in the program. And when I did my due diligence, I didn't like them. I said, no, I'm quite all right. What they did, they faked up a first information report, false report. The police, the judiciary, all in it, the mafia. And they came to arrest me when the minister was there. And I got an early warning. The lady said, run, Robert, go and hide. So early next morning, I hid, and for 7 days, I had to decide whether I want to give them the money they were demanding, $6,000 first, or take them to the court. But anyway, I decided to fight, and I told them I've not lost my integrity and I'm not going to pay something which I haven't lost. Anyway, in the end, the case dragged on for 6 months until the Australian government, the senators were convinced I am being victimized. My due process was compromised. So they were going to raise in the Senate what is being done to this little fellow, Robert Chelliah, And in the end, the foreign minister, I think Downer, if I'm not mistaken, he took my case to the cabinet, and the minister of immigration said, no, what Robert has done is nothing wrong. His due process being compromised. So the cabinet decided to give me a second passport and help me to flee India. Yes. So actually, the embassy, they helped me. I took a midnight flight and escaped. What? So, and that's an episode that will make a very interesting chapter in my, if I write a book on it. Okay, never mind. So that is how my migration and started. And after the Indian episode, I scaled down my operation. When I came back to Australia, I had $5 in my pocket. All my reserves finished. All my staff, I told them to look for other jobs. And my two daughters said, Daddy, don't do anything. We will look after you. Retire. I'm not the retiring type. So I told my son-in-law, John, give me $10,000 for 1 year. I will prove I can come up again. So he asked me for a business plan. I gave him a business plan, and yes, he gave me the $10,000, and he didn't want to take it back after that. And I rose back to my same old glorious status as a migration agent until 2018. I came to Cambodia from Malaysia for a holiday, 2017. And I saw the people here very good, and plenty of land, plenty of space. And I thought I'll do some few migration cases and at the same time go into semi-retirement. And that's how Lexmin was started. Do you want me to talk or do you want to ask questions?
No, keep going, yeah.
Okay. So one of my friends, a client, said, Robert, since you like gardening, there's 2 hectares of land which is lying idle. Take it and do what you want to do. I love gardening. So I went and looked at the 2 hectares of land and I said, okay, I will do some gardening. And what do? I say, I want to plant something which will contribute to human health. I was at that time about 79, 80 years of age. I said, what can I grow that will help me with my own health? So I did some diligence and I studied about Murunga and started that early stage. So my first thing was I didn't know anything about agriculture. I'm a social science. So I contracted a Japanese consultant, and he came and he said, we have to do this, we have to do that. And he charged an exorbitant fees. Midway, I realized he was not a consultant. He was a salesman trying to sell his fertilizer, his soil. And he is learning. I have to teach him about Murunga, So I had to terminate his service, but then I already had planned. I brought in some seeds from India, from Malaysia, from Singapore, and planted under different conditions, different soil, and watched them in a very crude manner, how each of the plants were performing, and kept some data and collected this data. Then a friend of mine said, Robert, I've got about 25 hectares of land lying idle. You can take it and use it and pay me whatever you want to. By that time, my passion and my curiosity in agriculture has gone deep. I used to read every night up to 2-3 a.m. about soil, about pests, fertigation, nutrient of plants, the physical characteristics. In my own way, I used to read in the Google search and try to digest as much information as possible and try to apply those knowledge directly into the field. So the more I went into it, the deeper it took me, out of total curiosity, wanting to further and further explore and understand the real science of agronomy and agriculture. And in that process, all my earnings from the migration service, and they were quite substantial, and my own life savings, I put into the project. I didn't stop to think back on the commercial aspect. It became, how can I describe? It's like an artist, abstract artist, trying to paint an abstract painting reflecting his total emotion on the canvas, and that's what it was. A non-agriculture graduate trying to create an agriculture farm as best as it could be.
And it's organic as well, yeah?
Yeah, organic. Yeah, right from the beginning. I told the Japanese consultant, if we are doing something, we are doing it best, not halfway about it. So the Japanese consultant said, don't worry about organic, I'll help to sell your product in Japan. I said, no. I wanted to international global standard. By that time, I sensed the food security of the world is becoming a critical issue. Not only the food security, the nutrition deficiency of the people. That time there was no endemic, no COVID. But then there was the climate change. All these three, to me, appeared to be a critical issue that's going to confront agriculture, food supply. So I decided three things to combine into one approach. Highly nutritional crops that will give nutrition, dietary supplement, and food crops, organic food crops that would globally will be in demand. So I got this 25 hectare of land on a 20-year lease and started cultivating plants like Moringa oleiferae, which is considered a miracle plant for nutrition, black ginger, black turmeric, rosella, all these nutritional crops within the 25 hectares. And there were too many traumatic challenges because organic is not an easy cultivation. And I am the first, I would say, dare say, the first crazy guy to have ventured into something unknown, a difficult area where nobody has ventured. There are people who have got monocrop, the big corporate cashew nut growers, single crop, the rice growers, the rubber, palm oil. These are all big corporations, and they are cultivating on a large commercial scale. And one or two of them were organic for a single crop. But I am the first farmer in Cambodia to have taken the challenge to have a horticulture with diverse crops, horticulture crops, to meet the global safety standards of supply, both supplement and so on. And I chose Cambodia, and I did look at the land in Malaysia and so on. Cambodia has got a geographical index land. Now, geographical index land, as you might know, is a prime land in few spots in the world where anything grown there has a superior quality. So I chose a farm in an area in the foothills, which is geographically indexed land, where the soil was quartz mountain soil. And that has paid me in the sense it got the recognition of this enormous challenge from the last 4 years, which I achieved, which amazed many people who have tried but did not succeed, but I have succeeded by and large. To the extent the Cambodian government recognized something in me, in my farm. They entered into an MOU with me to train other horticulture farmers to cultivate similar crops under safety standards, not so much as pure organic. We are organic to the extent we are certified by EcoCert. EcoCert is France-based, not Asian-based, recognized by USA, Europe, Canadian, and the Australian by default. These are the world's standard audited EcoCert. We have Australian vegan, we have got about 10 certificates the good agriculture practice from Europe, the good manufacturing practice from London, all the 10 certificates. That is our calling card now, which is being recognized as a valuable asset of the company, and it shows an achievement of an 83-year-old guy who didn't know anything about agriculture, but has brought up an entity, the framework, the infrastructure, ready to meet the global demand. In that, it has absorbed almost every penny income. Now I am not able to go forward to the next level because lack of fundings. So we are looking at ways and means how to generate this cash flow income. And my friend here, Murray, who has sacrificed his comfort zone from Thailand and has come here to help me stabilize the company in whatever way, and his knowledge, extensive knowledge in all the aspects of startup companies, agriculture, and so on, I consider is highly valuable and useful. And he's given us some very highly constructive suggestions which we are implementing. Now our product, it takes about 5 years for an agriculture company of our nature to turn around, to smell the first dollar. So we are just about in the 4th year. Unfortunately, the COVID came and disrupted. Otherwise, we would have achieved faster. Our product is beginning to go into Japan, Australia, Europe, and now we are talking seriously to a China company, and China is looking at big volume, our nutrition. Our nutrition supplement is considered one of the best. So we also have a contract with a European company to supply minimum for the 50 tons of ginger, galangal, chili, turmeric, And July we supplied ginger and turmeric. Because of problem, we couldn't supply them the minimum required. We could only supply 70% of what we had to supply of the 2 items. Now we have to improve our organic processing. Organic cultivation is one of the most difficult agriculture. We cannot use a drop or a grain of pesticide, unlike conventional. And when we get heavy rain, the soil becomes erodes of its nutrient, and the pest becomes invasive during the wet season, and we cannot manage the pest. So we had to quickly go into an adaptive agriculture. That is, I had to find the money to put 4 or 5 large net houses for 10 meter by 50 meter, and we are beginning to cultivate these crops within the net house in a protected manner, and it's in the early stage to see how successful they're going to be. I've also brought moringa seeds from the World Bank. Hawaii has got a moringa World Bank seed. I brought in seeds from 14 different countries, and we are going to test which of this variety is most best suited for the Mekong climate. And if it's established well, we will use that to local. I'm being recognized as a good pioneer in organic farming, and I've been invited to panel discussion in Singapore last month on the global women's empowerment thing. I didn't know what I was doing among all the women. And then I've got this Cambodian government's investor program on the 22nd, where they're talking about successful investors, Australian investors in Cambodia. I must say, there are one or two ministers very interested in what I'm doing. Seemingly, they are supportive. So far, I have not received any material assistance, either from the Australian government or the Cambodian government or anybody. So maybe I'm not forceful in demanding things, but the important thing is I do what I had to do, and I want to make my farm viable, and it's going to be viable because in my life experience, I've never failed. By and large, I've never failed in any project I had undertaken because I always follow my motto, do one thing and do it best and achieve success. So roughly, that is my background, and you can ask any questions, Kalvani.
Where do I start? It's so good. Yeah, but it just seems like you're always problem solving. Like,
Yes.
always.
Yes.
Yeah. And the root of the problem as well. Like, is that just something you learn or practice or?
It is brought into from my early age. I look back into my life. How did I come from an estate kid, laborer's child, to where I am, where I have been and where I am? It's an inbred curiosity. When I was schooling in Malaysia, in a village school, we were taught about snow and daffodils and Shakespeare and mountain cat, all that alien culture, whereas we were living in a village, in a tropical village, overgrown with weed and poverty. So it's like a too unfocused image in the mind during the formative years. And that got more worsened when I walked back from my school. I used to pass an Australian military camp, and these military soldiers used to throw the comics books in the dustbin. I don't think it's in your time, maybe you have seen them. Beano, Dandy, Topper. These are the comic books for kids, And I used to salvage them from the dustbin. And when I used to look after about 6 or 7 cows, I was a cow herd, I used to read all these comics and get these images of sausages, scenes of European culture, which to me is only in the mind, not in reality. So that created an insatiable curiosity where you live in a different world, but your mind has been cultivated into a different value system, So that motivated me to change. So I remember collecting a few dollars from my friend and getting a rucksack and hitchhiking to my widowed mother. She had no control over me at that time, poor thing, because I couldn't be anything worse than where I was at that time, So that courage set me off on the world journey. And then looking back at it, some of the people I mixed with became Michael Foot. I don't know, Michael Foot, the Labour guy from UK. His son was with me, studying in Lancing College. He was a good friend at that age. Haile Selassie's son was my hostel mate. These are kids of high class. And in the weekend, people will come to the private school. They will pick up their children. And because I was there, and I get picked up with one of them as well, I go in to spend the weekend. So that created a fusion of value, of changed my inner value construct, which helps in life, That is more than any university education, I would say. That changeover of attitudinal change. And the other thing is that impacted my life was Bishop Challen in the West Australia. He is a libertarian Christian. He is not a theological. He believed in Christianity acting. So he sent me on a tour to ARC, Action Resource Centre in Melbourne. It's a centre that taught people how to become empowered, not to be frightened by bureaucracy, how to handle threatening situations confidently, So I became a very, very effective social worker. I used to challenge some of the bureaucratic thinking until Charles Court, the Premier of Western Australia, he publicly called me, I'm a communist. Yes. he called Bishop Chelliah and told him, who is this guy coming to teach us how to suck eggs? He sounds more like a communist. And Bishop Chelliah said, that's the kind of a social worker we need, in Australia, and told him. So, those are the adventures of being an agent provocateur of social change. You have to be brave. You need not be sensitive. You're only accountable to your own conscience, your own value. You don't worry about what others say and what others think. The moment if you do that, you become subjugated to other people's subjective expectations. So that's how I've been able to do what I think is the right thing to do and do it rightly, with commitment. So that's and my achievement, which is the farm now Lexmin, is at a very precarious situation. It can fall either way because of lack of funding, lack of movement to the next level. So I have to be very careful, and I have full support and confidence with my friend here, Murray, and he's bringing in one or two other people to help to see how we can move forward. Yes.
Yeah. So what problems moving forward? Is it just logistics or, I don't know, with Lexmin?
A practical thing, our factory is 80%, I would say 60%. The machines are lying, they have not been unpacked from the casing, they have got to be joined. We need funding for them. Small thing like we need filtered water to wash the vegetable, the crops. We don't have that in the farm. So we have a well 75 feet deep, but the water is slightly heavy, contains heavy metal. They've got to be filtered and usable on food. Then there is this climatic change, which requires more net housing, and the soil, heavy rain has bleached the soil, because the soil is on a slope. Heavy rain creates both surface erosion and underground erosion. So there's uneven distribution of soil nutrient. That means the soil has got to be slightly reconditioned. Now we are going to go and cultivate organic vegetable. There's no one in Cambodia cultivating and supplying certified organic vegetable. And Murray has identified that gap, and we are now going to cultivate organic vegetable for the market consumers. And I brought in seeds, organic seeds from Queensland, like cucumber, cabbage, leafy vegetable, tomatoes, and we are going to cultivate them and distribute them for the local consumers. All this requires additional funding, that's that. And I've invited potential investors to come and share the project in a participatory manner, and we are looking at various structures, how to lift the Lexmin into the next level.
So, big question. Looking back on your career, what's your favourite memory?
My favorite memory is a challenge that I took it up. When I was resettling the Christmas Islanders, they were brought to work in Christmas Island, and when they became invalid or unable, they were sent back with nothing. They were absolutely exploited. And when I was put in charge to resettle these islanders, and there were about 20 cents for each ton of phosphate that went into the welfare of the workers. Where the money went, nobody knew, and my understanding was somebody was sitting on it, So my first program was we must identify all those people who were sent back to Malaysia, to bring them back and compensate them for what they should have been entitled to. Among them was one old man, very blind, Malay gentleman. He was somewhere near Malacca, and after great pain, somebody told me there's a man in absolute poverty who had worked in Christmas Island for 40 years. Due to diabetes, he lost his eyesight in the island, and he was sent back without any compensation. So that really struck a line in my mind and my heart. So I went all over Malaysia to look for him and identified him with the help, and I said we will take him into Australia. Now, the Australian Migration Act says if a person is sightless, he cannot enter Australia, cannot be given a resident status. Yes, that was a law. Sightless person cannot. So I forgot that I was a public servant, and I stirred the shit, and I said, that guy needs to be brought back into Australia. And the guys in Canberra at the federal level said, Robert, don't forget you're a public servant. I say, I don't care whether I'm a public servant or not. He is going to come into Australia. And I had his passport all arranged. And there was system not. Then I told the Australian minister, I will have the international media stand by to say how this man was exploited by the farmers in Australia for their phosphate, and you are now denying him his right. And that became a serious complaint against me, some federal level to the state level, and luckily the minister was Reverend Keith Wilson. He's a good Christian, and he empathized with me. He understood where I'm coming from, and I'm grateful to him. He was very supportive of me. So was Bishop Chelliah. And I won. They allowed, in the end, they relented. He came, they gave him a housing commission house, settled very well. His son grew up, that time was 2 years old, and last month he came to Malacca to look for me.
No way.
Yes, and the family that helped him, I went and saw them Malacca last month. They gave me a VIP treatment, I mean, their relatives. I mean, those are instances that sticks in your mind. They are it calls for extraordinary strength of bravery to challenge a state. That time I was young. I had nothing to lose because I'm used to it. I can be in a 5-star hotel in a moment, next moment I can be sleeping under the bridge at that time. So to me, all that is not materially important. What is important is to do the right thing. I mean, there are many instances like that, In the early days, in the 70s, you cannot go near the Department of Immigration. Any foreigner going, you are considered a threat to the system. There was one incident, RCO had a thick file on me. And there was an incident where the union and the right-wing guys were going to come and bash up people like me. And RCO guy was there, And I happened to be there. The file was with him. and I saw my name was wrongly spelled. I told him, my friend, you have spelled my name wrongly. Can you please change? I mean, these are the instances of your adventure in life, I have both my detractors and friends at the high level. Some admired my courage, some called me a shit stirrer, and those are the things that a community worker, social change, agent provocateur has to face. I had my heart attack at the age of 38. I almost died, and because of the pressure of the work, nature of the work, but I overcame that thing. So Lexmin is my major project. It has got a lot of needs. We are urgently looking for infusion of funds, and I've been talking to my friend Murray, and we think that it should take a certain structure. Because I've no one to take over the project. So I accept Murray's advice. We should form a trust and put the whole project into a trust form, so that the beneficiaries will be there, and it can only grow and grow. I expect the project to become a $30 million in the next 5 to 8 years. The dietary supplement in the world last year traded at $70 billion, dietary supplement trading. The people are beginning to be more and more administering themselves their own preventive care, health care. They are no more going to the doctor to synthetic medicine. And dietary supplement, plant-based, especially plant-based supplement, is growing very rapidly because of this demand. So I have every basis to base my view that my Lexmin product and the food crop will expand and grow to become minimum $30 million in the next 5 to 8 years, given the world trend on supplements. And to do that, we need funding, we need right human resource. I'm short of human resource, although I have friends like Murray to come and help me. That is not the end of the story. I need younger people with vision, with commitment, with same level of passion to take the company forward. Because I'm 83, my level of energy is eroding, and I've got my own limitation in that sense. So I have to take planned action to mitigate that gap, possible gap.
Last question. Maybe any advice for young people? Like, what's your life skill or experience you think they need?
My life experience is, all I can say is, everybody has got inner strength, untapped inner energy. That inner energy and that inner strength has got to be cultivated to come to the forefront when the situation calls. Human beings naturally, when they are faced with a crisis, they are daunted, they are frightened, they subjugate themselves, they sink. One should be trained. University doesn't give that sort of training. It doesn't give you the strength of character to stand up to challenges. And only your inner strength, inner level of energy, your intuitive vision, you have to learn how to tap into that and use that to overcome the crisis. That is a very valuable skill that youngsters should be taught.
Awesome. Robert, thank you so much for coming on today. Anything else? Or
it's okay. I think thank you for giving us this opportunity. I welcome anyone from anywhere to come and visit us in the farm. Our farm is open, and all my knowledge is open. I don't consider my knowledge to be any proprietary secret or anything, and I'm happy to share my experiences.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much, Robert. That's great. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, be sure to check out the website compoundingpodcast.com. On the website, you'll find every episode complete with transcripts, show notes, and other related resources. If you want an email notification every time an episode releases, plus my lessons and takeaways from each episode, be sure to sign up to the Substack. So that's compoundingcuriosity.substack.com. Either way, links to all content mentioned today will be in the description below, and you can also connect with me on Twitter @ScarrettKalani. But until next time, have a good one.